Welcome to the Rap Soul Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of music that moves our hearts and gets our feet tapping. This is the intersection of rap and soul music from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We appreciate you for listening. Share this podcast with a friend or family member who loves music as much as you do. The podcast is hosted by 12 Kyle. Next up, the Rap Soul Podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. This is the Rap Soul Podcast. This is the intersection of where we have discussions about rap, soul music, hip hop, and R&B from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. Simply put, this is the best music podcast that you've never heard until right now. So again, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Salute to everyone who is watching on YouTube. In this episode, what I want to talk about is hits. More specifically, some of your favorite artists have had some of the best hits in music that we can all talk about. But here's the thing. Every hit we all don't like. And what I'm going to do on this episode is talk briefly about some of your favorite artists, some of your favorite hip hop artists, by the way, who have had some smash hits that I just don't like. And these are not necessarily artists that I dislike. Most of the artists that I'm going to name, I actually like and I rock with their music. But here's the thing. I think if an artist is around for any particular amount of time, and if they put out, a couple of albums, it's within reason for you to believe or realize that you're not going to like all of their music. There's going to be some songs that you're just like, nah. The interesting thing about this episode is that I found in some artists that I like, some of their hits, some of their biggest songs, I just didn't like. And that's interesting because I'm sure I'm going to name a few songs that some of you are like, man, Kyle, you're bugging. But no, I just don't like them. And there's a particular reason why I don't like these particular songs. Sometimes a song can get played out. I mean, if you listen to as much hip hop as I've listened to over my lifetime, songs can get played out. There are some songs that I used to rock to back in the day that now not so much. Like, it's like, all right, whatever. Like, I can move on. I don't have to hear it. And then there's songs that I just never really gravitated to or never really particularly cared for. Or there's some songs I think from some of our favorite artists that were just downright cheesy if you think about it. But nonetheless, I wanted to bring this idea to the podcast. I've actually been sitting on this idea for a long time. I just never did a podcast on it. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is give you a few songs. We'll take a commercial break, and then on the other side of the break, I'll give you a few more songs before we get out of here. Starting up number one, and these are no particular order. I didn't rank them or anything. I just started just off the head, going off, some of the artists that I know, not lists. Some of the artists that I like. And again, no particular order. Jay-Z, one of Jay-Z's biggest hits. It was a radio single from his first album, Reasonable Doubt. Ain't No. Yeah, I don't like Ain't No. I know, I know that may surprise some of you, but Ain't No, at this point for me, it's a skip. Like, if I'm in a good mood, I'll listen to it because I still listen to Reasonable Doubt all the time. It's Jay-Z's, in my opinion, Jay-Z's best album. It's his first album, and I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. That being said, no, I'm not listening to Ain't No. Ain't No is just, it got tired to me very quick. It got very old very quick. And I mean, like, as it was probably charting up the charts, I got tired of it. So it's not that it's a bad song, but it's just like the hook is okay, but it's just like, the video actually helped me stick around a little bit longer for the song. And of course he's got Foxy Brown on it, but that particular song, nah, I'm not a fan of that song. It's not a skip for most people. And I always raise a few eyebrows when I tell people that. And I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. I'm an even bigger fan of Reasonable Doubt. I think it's one of the best hip hop albums, period. That being said, no, I don't like that song. And it's a hit. It's a smash. I just don't like it. Next up, Tupac Shakur. How Do You Want It? Listen, that song was a radio smash. I don't like that song. I've never liked that song. I thought the hook and the singing on it was not good. And I think is that Jodeci? I think it's Jodeci singing. I'm not sure. It's on the All Eyes on Me album, which is a phenomenal album from Tupac. Should have been a single disc, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, I'm not a fan of that song. How Do You Want It? It just and here's the thing. I don't even think Pac is rhyming like he normally rhymes on most of his songs. Well, I could say that for a few songs on All Eyes on Me, but I think, and I've mentioned this on other podcasts, and it's worth repeating here. I think Pac not being here for All Eyes on Me enhances how we feel about it. I say the same thing about Ready to Die. Life After Death from Biggie. I think them not being here enhances. It doesn't make it any better or any worse. I just think like our perception of it is different because we know that that's the last music sonically that they recorded for an album before they passed away. But no, How Do You Want It? I'm not a fan of that song at all. When I did listen to the radio, if it came on the radio, I changed the station. Now it ain't even so much about it being a skip for me. It's not. I can't even really call it a skip because I will listen to it, but I don't like the song. And so if I had to listen to it 10 times, probably 6 or 7 times, I'm not going to listen to it. But I don't think it's a good song. I think it was a stab at radio. And maybe, just maybe, as we go through this list, you're probably going to see that there may be a few songs that are radio friendly that I'm not too keen on, but we'll see. Next up, my man K. Dot, aka Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar's 4th album, I think. He had a song called Humble. Not a fan of that song. I thought the hook and the chorus was cheesy. He's kind of rhyming all over the place. It is a fan favorite. It is something that when he performs it, people love it. At the time of this recording, you remember he performed it at the Super Bowl halftime show. And there was a very cinematic thing that he did with the halftime show. But I'm not a fan of that song. Humble was on an album called Damn. And that was the first Kendrick Lamar album that I was just like, it's okay. The other albums prior to that, the other 3 albums, I were phenomenal. Blew me away. Damn was all right, and that's funny to say that because people will tell you about when you say that, people will talk about the accolades of Damn, or they may talk about how banging Humble was. It's okay. I don't like it. I've never liked the song. That might have been the lead single. If it wasn't the lead single, it may have been the second single. Wasn't a fan of it. Was not a fan of it at all. It was just mediocre at best. But y'all rock to it, so it's all good. Personally, it doesn't do anything for me. Next up, the late great Big Pun. Big Pun had a song on his, I think it was his 2nd album called You Came Up with Noriega. Didn't like that at all. I thought that song was so much away and a deviation from what I knew Pun to be. A lyrical MC who, would tear you up, had these hard banging beats. And it really felt like Pun was just shooting for the radio. Like this got the horns and everything. That song sounds it sounds boring to me. It sounds like they didn't have a lot to do in the studio, so they said, "Hey, let's put something together. Let's try something," and that was the product of them trying something. And I don't think it was good at all. Um, Unfortunately, I think Pun had already passed away, or maybe he was still alive, but he would pass away subsequently after this album was released. I'm sorry for not knowing. I'm not looking it up. Y'all can fact check me. But no, I'm not a fan of this song at all. I thought this song was boring. It's a very boring song to me. Next up, Nas, You Owe Me. Jay-Z actually criticized Nas about this song. Again, there's a theme here. It's a radio track, and Nas is done. Don't get it twisted. By the time Nas released this song on that album, he had done radio friendly songs, which I don't have a problem with. Because everything can't be boom bap, everything can't be backpack rap. You know, even though I love my backpack rap, I love boom bap or whatever the case may be. I'm a '90s guy, right? But You Owe Me with Genuine singing the hook. Again, here we go with the hooks. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's the hooks. I don't know. But this wasn't Nas. This wasn't Nasty Nas. This might have been Esco. or who was after Esco? Was somebody after? I can't remember if he was somebody after Esco, but nah, I'm not feeling You Owe Me is a club joint. Again, I think it was produced by Timbaland, so it's a banger. It is something that gets the club going. People get up for it, and you put it on, and people gonna jam and rock to it. I don't feel it like that. I just don't feel it like that. I'm sorry. Next up, Dr. Dre. When Dr. Dre struck out on his own, he created Aftermath, the label. He did a song called "Been There, Done That." Nah, this ain't the same guy that gave us "Express Yourself," "Fuck the Police," and thousands of other hits. "Let Me Ride," Nah, this is nothing but a G thing. Nah, this "Been There, Done That." The only thing I liked about "Been There, Done That" was the video. That's the only thing that I liked. Everything else, I mean, this, and fortunately for me, I have not heard this song in probably about 15 years. And I'm sure now that I'm talking about it online, it's probably going to pop up somewhere because, people are listening, right? Next up, again, these are in no particular order. Dr. Dre's protege, Marshall Mathers, a.k.a. Eminem. Eminem's debut song, My Name Is. Oh my God, this song was terrible. This song got played out so fast. And it didn't help that My Name Is got a lot of airplay on Top 40 radio, on white radio, on black radio. It was literally like on MTV, it was on BET. You couldn't escape it. And it takes nothing away from how dope Eminem is. But when you dig deeper into who Eminem is as an MC, you could clearly see that this was their pitch to radio. This was going to be the lead to get him on radio, to get him on MTV, and it did. I mean, hey, yeah, I'm not mad at the marketing plan, but that song is god awful. I mean, hi, my name is no, it's terrible. My name is Slim Shady. It's I'm not feeling it. I've never felt it. I'm never going to feel it. So it just is what it is. But right now it's time to take a commercial break. On the other side of the break, I'll give you a few more songs. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. If you want a podcast where culture, conversation, and life collide, where you get insightful commentary, engaging discussions, and a fresh perspective on everything, then you need to listen to the 12 Kyle podcast. Hosted by the one and only, yours truly, 12 Kyle, a voice that you know and trust. This podcast will bring you thought-provoking moments, compelling stories, and a whole lot of fun. Whether you're a first-time listener or just tuning in, each episode promises to be something new and exciting. So sit back, relax, join 12 Kyle, myself, and my guests as we break down the world around us and give you stories that you've never heard before. from nostalgic throwbacks to everything in between. The 12 Kyle podcast is a front row seat to this conversation. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of the 12 Kyle podcast, where the vibe is always real and the discussion is always worth your time. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shape the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul podcast and enjoy the vibes. And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is another edition of the Rap Soul podcast. And what we're talking about is unlikable hits, at least some of my favorite unlikable hits. I do still subscribe to the theory, and I mentioned this in the beginning of the podcast, that, you know, some of our favorite MCs or stars or singers, for that matter, even though we're not talking R&B on this episode, some of our favorite people, they've made some bad songs, or at least songs that are hits that we just don't like. And I'm sharing with you guys a few of mine. Next up, a guy who's been in the news a lot here lately at the time of this recording, Aubrey Drake Graham. Drake made a song called Hotline Bling a couple of years ago. That song was god awful. Now, here's the thing. Before I even get into the song, I know some of you, particularly some of you who know me personally, are saying like, hey, KD, this is you dumping on Drake again. I'm not dumping on Drake. I happen to like some of Drake's earlier music. Songs like Don't You Got a Man? What was the other joint? Was it Think Twice? I can't remember the name of the song, but he had some joints that I like, but that was like underground Drake. That was like mixtape Drake. I'll be honest, I stopped listening to Drake's music a long time ago. And that doesn't mean that he makes bad music. He does not make music for me, clearly. And then when we had the beef back and forth between him and Kendrick Lamar, I think, and I said it at the time, I thought that, you know, I was impressed at first because Drake got up off the canvas. I thought Drake, obviously he didn't want to smoke with Meek Mill. Excuse me, not Meek Mill. Pause. Let me back up. He didn't want to smoke with Pusha T. He beat Meek Mill. But Kendrick was something different because that's a lyrical MC. I'm not going to rehash the beef. If you think Drake won that battle, I don't know what to tell you. I could probably sell you some real estate on Mars. But Hotline Bling was terrible. But again, I understand that Drake made that song for, you know, I was about to say 18-year-old girls, not A minors, but I digress. He made it for young people. He made it for the younger crowd. He didn't make it for me, so it's cool. I don't like the song, but it was a smash, and it was one of Drake's biggest hits. And you know, Drake has a way of doing it. He's a hit maker. You don't have to like Drake, but the reality is Drake has made some hits, and I don't think you could take that away from him. He doesn't make music for me, so I'm cool. Oh man, the next one. My boy Ice Cube. Ice Cube, the former leader of NWA, once made a song called We Be Clubbin'. I can't tell you how disappointed I was in that song, and I'm still disappointed to this day, and I love Ice Cube like no other MC. That's one of my favorite MCs, but that song is godright terrible. It is awful. It is not Ice Cube. It's not Ice Cube. It's not even Jerry Curl Ice Cube. It's not vintage Ice Cube. That song is another stab at the radio. And I get it, but that ain't Cube. That ain't the brother we love to hate. Come on, man. I mean, what are we talking about? That's every time that song comes on, it's almost like somebody took a piece of chalk and just scratched it across the chalkboard. That song irks me, and I get it, but I don't get it. Another legend. Now this guy, I've been following him since 1985. He calls himself the GOAT, even though he's not. LL Cool J, Headsprung. Love the beat. The beat is crazy, but that song is terrible. It was LL's attempt to kind of come back, if you will, again, because he told us not to call it a comeback. But this song's not good, man. People rock out to this song like it's good, but this song is not good. First of all, he starts the song off with, "They call me Big Ellie." No, they don't. They've never called you Big Ellie. Nobody calls you Big Ellie. Just you and Eclectic. Shout out to my boy Eclectic from the Eclectic Discussion Podcast and the Encyclopedia Hip Hop Podcast, and frequent contributor to this podcast. But no, nobody calls you Big Ellie. Your wife don't even call you Big Ellie. She calls you James, or she calls you Todd. That's your name, James Todd Smith. Nobody calls you Big Ellie. So him starting off the song with "They call me Big Ellie," he lost me right there. The beat is crazy. If I put it like this, I would love this song if LL wasn't rapping on it. Just give me the instrumental and I'm rocking. But no, they call me Big Ellie. Stop it. My man Clifford Harris, aka T.I. Whatever you like. Man, listen, that song is trash. And I love T.I., man. T.I. has always represented the city, Atlanta, where I live. He's always represented to the fullest. And a highly respected MC. And, the king of the South. Much like me, he's the king of the South. But no, whatever you like is terrible. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm finding out something as I'm talking about this. Maybe I don't like these radio friendly songs it's one thing to get radio play with your song. It's another thing when you go into the studio and specifically say, "Hey, we got to get this to the radio. We need a radio smash." And this song was a hit, but this song is terrible. Next up, the late great Dark Man X, the dog. Party Up. Party Up. It ain't it. And it's DMX's biggest hit by far. I don't even have to look it up. It's his biggest song. That song, that ain't DMX, man. I'm waiting on the story for somebody to tell me that DMX really didn't want to do the song and they twisted his arm and he did it. I'm sure that there's a story out there somewhere. Somebody has to tell this story because I just can't see the DMX that I know and remember and love. I can't see him going into the studio and saying, "Hey, y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here, up in here." No, not the dog. Come on, man. The dog's not doing that. So, no, I wasn't a fan of that song. I will sit through that song now. But I don't like it. I've never liked that song from the first time I heard it. Now I've been consistent with it. It wasn't the fact that the song got played a gazillion times, but I never liked it. I never liked it from the beginning. Here's another one. One of my favorite groups of all time. OutKast. Hey Ya. There may not have been a bigger song that was aimed at radio from day one than Hey Ya. Hey Ya got play everywhere that you could think about. And the thing is, I don't think OutKast actually needed the airplay or the crossover appeal because they'd already done that, but it put OutKast in a whole nother stratosphere. That being said, this is OutKast's worst song. And I know and I've listened to and love every other album that they've made. This is their worst song. I will never sit and listen to this song intentionally. And I love OutKast like family. But no, that song is terrible. This next one may surprise you, and I'll leave you with this one. It was a collaboration between the late great Notorious B.I.G. and Bone Thugs Harmony. Song was called Notorious Thugs. It was a hit. I wasn't a fan of that song at all. And yeah, here's the thing, and I know what you're all saying. Well, Biggie, he flipped the flow, man. He was rhyming like Bone. That's the point. Why is Biggie rhyming like Bone? Why? And I understand, yeah, Bone was hot back at that particular time. And, you know, it was something different. You know, these cats from Cleveland, and, you know, Biggie was tapping into more West Coast ties, if you will, with this song. But no, that song's not that good. It's not as good as people think it is. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I remember distinctly reading the liner notes as I was listening to Life After Death, because as you remember, or maybe you don't remember, Life After Death came out. I think it was like 2 weeks after Biggie was tragically murdered, right? So there was no really kind of rollout. The only song that was out at the time was Hypnotized. And so we got word that Bone Thugs and Harmony were going to be on this album. And so I remember opening up the CD and listening to it and reading and everything, reading the liner notes. Shout out to those of you who read the liner notes. I know we don't have hard copies of music anymore, so there's no liner notes to read. But yeah, I was, reading the liner notes. I'm like, oh, snap. Bone Thugs is on here. Okay. So I get to the song and it's like, it's Bone and Biggie, Biggie. It's Bone and Biggie, Biggie. And Biggie starts it off and I'm like, what is he doing? Like, I didn't hate it immediately, but that song, the more and more I listened to the album, the less and less that song got played. And it fell out of rotation. And now I'm like, it's not that good. People love it, because it's Biggie and it's Bone Thugs. And Bone was one of the few artists to be able to say that they worked both with Biggie and Pac while they were alive. But that being said, no, not feeling that at all. Not feeling it at all. Sorry. Not sorry. In conclusion, I think if we're being honest as hip hop fans, some of our favorite stars and favorite artists have made songs that weren't that good. And unfortunately, or fortunately, some of those songs became hits. And what we like and what we don't like is subjective. Every artist that I named on this list are great artists. Even the ones that I don't particularly care for or make music for me, like Drake, still a great artist. I don't think you could take that away from anybody. You don't have to like Andre 3000 or Big Boy to understand and appreciate what OutKast has done. You don't have to be a Jay-Z fan or a Kendrick Lamar fan to understand how dope they are. But every now and then, some of the best will drop a dud. And sometimes these duds become hits. And I just happen to be the one to say, hey, you may have a hit, but I don't like it. And I'm cool with that. And so should you be. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Monday at midnight. We're on social media, Rap Soul Podcast across the board. And if you'd like to contribute to us financially, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. You can also follow us on social media, Rap Soul Podcast on every social media platform, and we're also on TikTok as well. And don't forget about the flagship station. That is the 12 Kyle Podcast. We drop new episodes on the 12 Kyle Podcast every Thursday and every Sunday. Every Thursday and every Sunday at midnight. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Once again, this is your boy 12 Kyle with another edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. Again, like I said earlier, it is the intersection of conversation and discussion about rap, soul, hip hop, and R&B from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. This is, and you'll agree, the best music podcast that you've heard. Once again, I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. This concludes the episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the podcast on social media. And feel free to continue this discussion on our Reddit page. More importantly, Share this podcast with a friend or family member who loves music as much as you do. Until next time, 5,000.